I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and have for many years. And if there's one thing that you see a lot, especially downtown where I used to live, is there's a large homeless population. Back in 2006 and 2008, I embarked on a journey to get to know some of these individuals, talk with them, chat with them, help them, and photograph them with their permission to help raise awareness of the problem that was happening in my town, my city, and all over the world. There are people who are homeless. Now, some are there for drug issues, mental issues, some are scammers, some just try to get away with not working, but there are some who had a change of events in their life that led them to the streets. And that's who I wanted to talk with and get to know. I started seeing characters around the same ones, so I started chatting with them. So here are my photos from Phoenix, and first up is Joseph. I was walking through town with camera in hand, and I saw this guy on his wheelchair. He was smiling, he was talking, and as soon as he saw my camera, he asked me if I could take his picture. He wanted to show me how he could pop wheelies with his wheelchair. And it turned out he used to live in town. He had a family, and his wife passed, and he ended up on the street with a turn of bad luck. And I sat there and was thinking, this could be me, anyone. This can happen to anyone, unless you're filthy rich, which I'm not. And I started to get to know these individuals who lived on the street, who, even though despite their hard times and sometimes horrific lives in this 120-degree heat, they were still happy. And Joseph here was extremely happy. Here he was like trying to show me how he can pop a wheelie, and he was making his faces, and he was really fun, and he just wanted to keep talking and talking. I ended up buying him water and some food. I gave him a few bucks, because if you live on the street in Phoenix, Arizona, you're in for a torturous time, and these folks need all the help they can get. Next up, we have Rodney. I really connected with Rodney, and these were shot on film on Tri-X 400. I saw him wandering around with a busted head and had some dried blood, and he seemed a little confused, and I asked him if he was okay, and he said he had got beaten up the night before and robbed, and the little belongings he had, and he actually was in a urgent care, and they fixed him up and sent him out the door without even cleaning him off. And he went on to tell me more about his story. And Rodney's another one of those where he was maybe a little mentally off. He couldn't remember a lot of details, but he did remember that he was supposed to receive a monthly check, but he couldn't remember where to get that check. So I tried to help him find the location that he was looking for. And we did find the location. It was an assisted living home. So that made me feel really good that we were able to help him out in that. Rodney was very nice. We went into the alley and we chatted for a while. He sat down on an old couch that was in the alley, started to roll his own cigarette, and just talked with me. He was very soft-spoken, very calm, very nice. And, I knew that, again, being homeless, it's not by choice. Some of these people just hit upon hard times, and living on the street, I can't even imagine. But I know at the same time that any turn of events could happen to any of us. And this could be us. So again, I wanted to raise awareness and show people that we're all humans. We all live here together on Earth, and we all have the same thing in common. We're trying to survive. We're trying to enjoy life. And in the case of Rodney, unfortunately, he wasn't able to enjoy life, but he was trying to survive. And he loved that I stopped to talk to him. He said, people are usually afraid of me. And so I helped him out with some water and some money, and I looked for him after that, and I could never find him again. So I really don't know what happened with Rodney. I soon met Stanley. I would see this man walking around my neighborhood, all the time with a big shopping cart. The temperature could have been 115, and there he was, still pushing that cart, still covered up with clothing and a big bag. So after seeing him around town, I knew I had to stop and chat with him and get to know him. And I ended up chatting with him a few times over a few months, and he got to remember me and know me. But Stanley was a trip. He was very happy-go-lucky, proud of the collection he had in his shopping cart. He would push that thing around town constantly. And he said he was from Kentucky originally, and he had a family here in Phoenix, a wife who died. His kids moved away, and he said they forgot about him. He lost his house due to financial hardship, and he was living on the street trying to survive. He would sleep in alleyways, behind dumpsters, and this was everything that he owned in the world. I got the sense that Stanley was a little mentally ill, but he was so excited that I approached him and talked with him because, again, he said nobody talks to them or him. He says that people usually just walk by, ignore, make a face, and I was one of the rare ones who came to have a conversation with him. And here he was telling me about his life, in the past, when he had a house and had some money. So we chatted. It was so hot out, I went and I picked up some water. I gave it to him. I gave him the cash I had in my pocket, which was only $10. But when I saw Stanley again on another day, he remembered me, and I helped him out with some food. And I just want these individuals like Stanley to be able to get through this. And while their future looks bleak to themselves and us who look at them, they have that will to survive. They have that human spirit, and they feel like Stanley when they have something like a cart full of goods that he's picked up out of the trash. He feels that he has something. And when I gave him that $10, you should have seen his face lit up. When I gave him that water, you should have seen his face lit up, the biggest smile. So Stanley was very nice, very energetic, and I enjoyed meeting him, and I enjoyed my follow-up meetings with him later on when I didn't have a camera with me. I only take their photos after getting to know them and after asking their permission. And again, I would share these over at my website, stevehufpphoto.com, to raise awareness and to try to tell other people like you watching. If you see homeless people and they look legitimately homeless, not like scammers like some are, talk to them. They will value that more than you giving them money, especially in the case of Stanley here. He enjoyed my company more than the $10 I gave him. So I have no regrets, and for anyone who thinks this is exploitation, you are wrong. I am here because I have empathy for these individuals, and I hate seeing anyone, any living human or animal suffer, which brings me to Mary, which is a very sad case here. Mary, I would see her walking through certain streets every day as I drove to work, my office, and even if it was 120 degrees outside, she would wear this big coat, and I felt so bad. And she looked like, someone who once had a great life and again fell victim to some tragedy in life. I approached her one day, and it was obvious she had become an alcoholic because she was asking if I could buy her some wine, and I said, no, but I can buy you some food and water. And I asked her why she wore that coat even when it was 120 degrees. And she said because it makes her look good. And as we talked more about her hard times, she didn't want to give up too much information, but she kept trying to put her arm around me, calling me handsome, and said I reminded of her son. And so I got a hold of some water, and I think I remember giving her a sandwich, and I asked if I could take her photo, and she just got all flustered and smiled and couldn't believe that I wanted to take her portrait. So she tried to fix her hair, and she sat down in a bus stop area, and folded her hands like this and said, "Okay, I'm ready for my picture, honey." And I stepped back, and again, this was shot on Tri-X 400 film. But you can see the weathered look, the tired look, the look in her eyes. You know, it made me feel so sad. And what's even more sad is the next couple weeks go by and I didn't see her anymore. But I did see another homeless person with a cart, and Mary's coat was in their cart. It made me wonder if she passed away on the streets. I only captured 2 images of Mary because I had hoped to see her more. But that's the reality of living on the street. You don't have medical care. You can't be healthy. Many drink to get by. And in the case of Mary, she once had a life. She once lived a happy life. And again, falling on hard times brought her to the streets. And it's so, so sad. It's so sad, especially when I see people walk by, individuals like Mary, and scoff or make a face. When I see homeless people that are in genuine need of help, I try to help with what I can do, whether that's in the form of conversation, food, and water, or all 3. And now we meet Dan. Dan was a cool character. He refused to admit he was homeless. He said he came from California and he just liked being a drifter on the streets. He said he was giving Phoenix a try to test out the weather because he heard it was nice in the winter. So he showed me his hairpiece that he said was homemade. He made it himself. He was bald underneath that. And he was working on a watch. He said he loved working on electronics, and he was going to repair that watch so he can wear it and know what time it is. And it was one of those old, like 1980s LCD or LED type of watches that you'd buy for $5 brand new. And it was, you know, it didn't look like he was going to succeed in fixing it, but he sat there all day working on it. Because even after I got to know him, I ended up sitting down with him and chatting for a while. And he told me he's just a free spirit and he loves traveling. And again, he loved chatting with me. When you sit down and talk to people on the street, a lot of them just love talking to you. So here he was working on the watch, and I didn't stick around with Dan long, but he saw my camera and asked again if I would take his photo while he worked on his watch. So I said sure, and then I told him that I was trying to raise awareness for people on the street, you know, he was cool with that. So Dan was a great guy, nice guy, very creative guy since he weaved his own wig, and he was happy-go-lucky. He seemed like he didn't have a care in the world, and after a little while of chatting, I said, well, it was nice to see you, and then I continued to see Dan in that same spot for the following 2 weeks, and then I never saw him again. But it was nice to meet Dan. Which leads us to Scott. I wasn't even out looking for photos. It was night, and I went to my local convenience store to pick up something that we needed at the house, and I saw this man shivering. It was midwinter, and while it doesn't get freezing like it does in New York or Chicago and Phoenix, it was pretty cold. And he was shivering on the corner, standing by the dumpster. So I walked up to him and I said, "You okay?" And he said, "Oh, I'm just cold, but thanks for asking." And I remembered I kept in my car at the time blankets, water, towels, in case I ran into a situation like this. So I had a big fluffy blanket. I went to the car, got it out. I walked up to Scott and I said, "Well, since you're so cold, why don't you take this blanket?" And I gave him the blanket, and he had the warmest smile. And he said, "I can't believe it. Thank you, God. No one ever cares about me." And he started having tears come down his eye. And I didn't want to photograph him while he was having tears coming down. But it was a really warm moment, and I felt so good to be able to help him on this cold winter night, knowing that he's on the street alone. You know, I think it was probably November, December, or January. It had to be one of those months. And here he is alone on the street. And he told me that he didn't have any friends, because friends on the street a lot of times will turn their back on you or rob you or take what you have. So he stayed by himself and stayed alone. I wished him well. I might have given him $10, $15. And, you know, away I went, and I never saw Scott again. But again, if you see a legitimate homeless person on the street and they're suffering, and they're truly suffering, and it doesn't appear to be drug related or someone who's lazy, you know, I made sure to go out of my way to spot legitimate people who were in need. Help them, talk to them, give them a couple bucks, give them a food, give them a meal, give them some water. They will really appreciate it, and they will care more than you know. Thanks for watching. These are old photos, but I never put them on YouTube, so I wanted to document on YouTube and place this on the page where they reside at stevehufffphoto.com. Again, to raise awareness. I've been meaning to start this project back up for a while, and maybe I will do it soon. Thanks all. If you like this video, thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you.